16 years dedicated to being a single mom, fighting to give my daughter Emily the best. And it was on her wedding day that I heard her future husband tell his friends marrying that filthy pig of her daughter is the price to put my hands on that fortune. In that moment, something broke inside me. I decided he would never see a cent of what I built, even if it destroyed my only daughter's dream of a perfect wedding. But before we continue, make sure you are subscribed to the Elderly Stories channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. The clock struck 10:13 in the morning when I finished fixing my maid of honor dress. My daughter Emily would be married in less than 5 hours, and everything had to be flawless. 16 years as a single mother taught me to pay attention to details, and this would be no different. I had saved every penny to give my only daughter the wedding of her dreams. The hotel where the ceremony would take place was luxurious, but modest for the standards of Michael the groom. He came from a wealthy family, although recently he had faced financial problems. I never discussed it with Emily, but I noticed how his interest in her increased after our small bakery business began to take off. In the last 3 years, we went from a makeshift kitchen to being one of the biggest distributors of fine desserts in the city. "Mom, can you get my bouquet from the groom's prep room? I forgot it there when I went to leave his gift." Emily asked me while the makeup artist finished her work. I nodded with a smile. My daughter was radiant, her eyes shining with expectation. She always dreamed of a fairy tale, and I wanted to believe she had found her prince. I walked down the hotel hallway, trying not to wrinkle my dress. The hall was already being decorated with arrangements of white and gold flowers that I myself had chosen. I approached the room where Michael and his groomsmen were getting ready. The door was ajar and I heard male laughter. I was about to knock when I heard Michael's voice clear and mocking. "Just a few more hours, guys. Then I sign those partnership papers, put my hands on her bakery, and that is it. Marrying that filthy pig of her daughter is a small price to recover what my father lost in business." I froze. My legs went weak and my heart seemed to stop. Instinctively, I stepped away from the door, leaning against the wall so I would not fall. "But you are going to have to sleep with her." "Man," said a voice I recognized as Brian, his best friend. "Nothing a bottle of tequila will not solve." Michael replied, laughing. "She is so pathetic she believes it when I tell her I love her. And her mom, that old idiot working day and night in that bakery, she does not even imagine that in 6 months we sell everything and she goes back to the neighborhood she never should have left." The laughter increased. I felt my blood boil in my veins. Breathing became difficult. My vision darkened for an instant, and I had to control myself not to invade that room and end that jerk's dental career by ripping his teeth out one by one. "And when she starts crying about anything, she looks like a beached whale," Michael continued without mercy. I could not take it anymore. With shaking hands and a broken heart, I walked away in silence. Emily, my little girl. My pride was about to marry a monster who saw her as a means to an end. I went back to the room where she was getting ready without the bouquet. My mind was racing, trying to process what I had just heard. How would I tell Emily? Would she believe me? Or would she think I was trying to sabotage her wedding? "Mom, are you okay?" "And the bouquet?" asked Emily, noticing my expression. It was locked. "I'm going to ask for the key." I lied, trying to buy time. I went out again, closed the door, and leaned my forehead on the cold wood. Silent tears ran down my face. I had to make a decision, and fast. I took my cell phone and called Anthony, my accountant and friend of years. He was the only person I trusted completely for financial matters. "Anthony, I need you to come immediately to the Grand Plaza Hotel and bring those contingency documents we prepared last year. Yes, the emergency ones. No, I cannot explain now. It is urgent." He agreed without asking questions. That was our friendship. Then I called my lawyer. If Michael thought he would put his hands on what I built with sweat and tears, he was very wrong. I had little time, but I was determined. I took a deep breath, wiped my tears, and went back to Emily's room this time with a firm resolution in my heart. As a mother, I had 2 equally painful options: destroy my daughter's dream wedding by revealing the truth, or let her fall into the trap of a man who only wanted to use her. I watched her in the mirror as the stylist finished her hair. Emily was smiling, oblivious to the storm that was forming. Her lace dress was simple and elegant, exactly as she always wanted. I had saved for years for this day, working endless nights at the bakery. "You look beautiful," I told her with a choked voice. "Mom, do not cry yet. You are going to ruin your makeup," she joked, not knowing the real reason for my tears. What she did not know is that in the next few hours, I would take drastic measures that would change our lives forever. The determined woman who had built a business from scratch was about to show her claws. Anthony arrived in record time, carrying a black briefcase under his arm. We met in the hotel lobby in a discreet corner near the emergency stairs. "Rachel, what happened?" he asked, concerned. I told him everything I had heard, every dirty word that came out of Michael's mouth. Anthony went pale. Then I saw the rage grow in his eyes. "That miserable wretch," he muttered. "What are we going to do?" "Implement the contingency plan now, not later, not tomorrow. Now." The contingency plan was something we had prepared when we started expanding the business, a way to protect the company in case something happened to me. I never imagined we would use it to stop a scammer son-in-law from taking control of everything. "Rachel, are you sure this will completely prevent Michael from having any access to the company assets, but it also means Emily will not be able to touch the money until the terms we establish I completed?" "Yes, I am sure. It is the only way to protect her." Anthony opened the briefcase and we began to review the documents. We called the notary and the bank using our connections to speed up procedures that would normally take weeks. In 2 hours, the bakery Emily's Treats no longer belonged to me, but to a holding company that I controlled. Any significant financial decision would need my signature, and that of at least 2 of the administrators I named, Anthony and my sister Melissa. Emily would continue to be a beneficiary receiving her allowance, but she could not sell, transfer, or use the company as collateral for loans. Most importantly, her future husband would have no right to the business regardless of the marital property regime they chose. As Anthony finalized the procedures online, I went back to see Emily. She was having lunch with the bridesmaids, laughing and sharing childhood stories. My heart shrank. Would this be her last moment of genuine happiness? I hesitated at the door, watching her. It was my duty to protect her, even if it meant hurting her. But how to tell her the truth without destroying her special day? How to prove what I had heard? "Mrs. Rachel." The voice of Jessica, the wedding planner, brought me back to reality. "Is everything okay?" "The musicians need guidance on when to start." "Yes, I am coming," I replied automatically. When I went back to the lobby, Anthony handed me a folder with documents. "It is done," he said. I signed as a witness. Melissa sent the digital power of attorney. The transfer of assets is concluded. Michael cannot touch anything, even if he marries Emily. I sighed, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. But another much heavier one took its place. I had protected the assets, but what about my daughter's heart? Rachel. Anthony held my hands. "You have to tell her before the ceremony." "I know," I whispered. "But what if she does not believe me? What if she chooses to stay with him anyway?" "Then she will do it, knowing the truth. She is an adult. She needs to make her own decisions." At that moment, I saw Michael entering the lobby with his groomsmen. They were laughing, fixing their ties, completely oblivious to my presence. The rage returned with full force. "I'm going to tell her now," I decided. When I entered the room, Emily was alone, already dressed and ready. She looked like a princess in her white dress, the delicate veil framing her face. She smiled when she saw me, but her smile disappeared when she saw my expression. "Mom, what is wrong? Did something happen?" I sat next to her, holding her hands. "Emily, my love, I need to tell you something very difficult." I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Today, when I went to get your bouquet, I heard Michael talking to his groomsmen. I told her everything, every cruel word, every mocking laugh. As I spoke, I saw her face transform. First disbelief, then confusion, and finally a pain so deep I thought my heart would break along with hers. "No," she shook her head, letting go of my hands. "He would not do that. You must have heard wrong. Honey, I know it is hard to believe, but—" "No, Mom." Her voice rose. "You never liked him. You always thought he was with me for money." Emily. I heard it with my own ears. I insisted, keeping calm. He called you horrible things. He said it was a small price to marry you to get his hands on the bakery. Tears began to run down her face, ruining the perfect makeup. Why are you doing this today? Just today? She stood up, moving away from me. Because I love you, honey, and I prefer you hate me now than discover the truth when it is too late. She turned to the mirror, trying to hold back the crying. I want to talk to him, she decided, picking up her cell phone. I am going to ask him directly. Emily, he is going to deny it. It is my wedding, she screamed, something rare for her. My daughter was always sweet and controlled. My life. I decide what to do. She was right. It was her life, her choice. I had done my part by protecting the assets and telling her the truth. The rest was in her hands. Okay, I conceded. Talk to him. But before that, I want you to know something. I handed her a copy of the documents I had signed with Anthony. What is this? I transferred the bakery to a holding company. You will still receive your allowance, but neither you nor Michael can sell or use the company as collateral. It is a protection measure I took today after what I heard. Emily glanced at the papers, her expression passing from shock to indignation. You did this without consulting me? How could you? It was necessary. If I am wrong, it will make no difference. But if I am right, I left the sentence in the air. She stared at me for a long moment, silent tears running down her face. Then she took her cell phone and called Michael. Mike, I need to talk to you. Now. It is urgent. Her voice was trembling. Come to my room. After hanging up, she turned to me. I want you to stay, Mom. I want you to hear what he has to say. I nodded, and we waited in a tense silence. A few minutes later, someone knocked on the door. Michael entered the room with that charming smile that had so bewitched my daughter. He was wearing an impeccable suit, hair slicked back, the perfect image of the anxious groom. His smile faltered when he saw me there. Honey, what is wrong? You should not be ready to... He stopped, noticing the tears on her face. What happened? Why are you crying? Emily took a deep breath, wiping her tears. I need to ask you a question. Mike and I want you to be completely honest. Michael looked at me, then back at her, visibly uncomfortable. Of course, my love, whatever it is. Are you marrying me for love or for the bakery money? The silence that followed was deafening. I saw Michael's face pass through various emotions in seconds: surprise, confusion, calculation, and finally a mask of indignation. What kind of question is that? He approached her, trying to take her hands. Of course I am marrying for love. Where did you get that? Emily stepped away, keeping the distance. My mother heard you in the room with the groomsmen. She said you called me a filthy pig, that marrying me was just a small price to pay to get your hands on the bakery. Michael looked at me with rage, then forced a laugh. And you believed her, Emily? Your mother never liked me. She is inventing this to separate us. I am not inventing anything, I replied, keeping my voice calm. I heard every word you said, Michael. Prove it, he challenged me, crossing his arms. It is your word against mine. It was when I realized something. My cell phone. After hearing the initial conversation, I had gone back to the hallway and recorded part of the conversation while they were still talking. Even I did not remember that detail, acting on instinct in that moment of shock. I took the device and accessed the recordings. There it was. I pressed play. She is so pathetic. She believes it when I tell her I love her. And her mom, that old idiot, working day and night in that bakery. She does not even imagine that in 6 months we sell everything, and she goes back to the neighborhood she never should have left. Michael's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable, followed by laughter. And when she starts crying about anything, she looks like a beached whale. I stopped the recording. Emily's face was pale, her eyes fixed on Michael, who seemed to have seen a ghost. Emily. I can explain, he began, but she raised her hand, interrupting him. Explain what exactly? How you plan to use me and then discard me. How you laughed at me with your friends. They were just stupid jokes. The guys were provoking me. I drank too much. He tried to get closer again, but Emily stepped back. Do not touch me. Her voice was ice. Were you really going to sell the bakery? Everything my mother built, everything we worked for? Michael looked at me, then at her, his face transforming. The mask fell, revealing the coldness that I always suspected existed behind the charm. And what is the problem that bakery could be worth millions in the right hands? You two are so sentimental attached to that place, as if it were something special. It is special, screamed Emily, the pain giving way to rage. It is my mother's life. It is my life. Oh, please. Michael rolled his eyes. You could have so much more. I was going to give you a life you cannot even imagine. With my family's money, what difference does it make? Money is money. Emily took the documents I had given her and threw them at his chest. Read this. My mother transferred everything to a holding company. You are never going to touch a cent of our money. Michael took the papers, reading quickly. I saw his face go from contempt to understanding and then to shock. He looked at me furious. You cannot do this. I already did, I replied simply. He crumpled the papers and threw them on the floor. This is not going to stay like this. I have friends lawyers. I am going to contest it. You can try, I challenged him, but it will be difficult to explain to the judge why you deserve access to my family's assets after this recording. His rage transformed into calculation, always the strategist. Michael turned to Emily, softening his expression. Honey, let's talk in private. Your mother is putting things in your head. What you heard, I can explain it. They were silly jokes. I am nervous about the wedding. I said nonsense to impress those idiots. Emily looked at him for a long moment. I saw her hands shake her chest, rising and falling with irregular breathing. I feared she would give in, that love would blind her again. Get out of my room, she said finally, her voice low but firm. Emily, please! Get out! She screamed, throwing a vase at him. The object crashed against the wall, water and flowers scattering on the floor. Michael stepped back, surprised by the explosion. He looked at me with pure hate, then back at her. You are going to regret this, he threatened. You two are going to regret. Then he left, slamming the door. When we were alone, Emily collapsed on the floor, sobbing. I ran to hug her, holding her while her body shook with crying. My girl, my baby, my heart. Seeing her suffer like that was as if my soul was being torn to pieces. I loved him so much. Mom, she cried. How could he? How did I not realize he was good at lying, honey? I whispered, rocking her like when she was little. And you are good at seeing the best in people. For almost half an hour, we were like that on the floor of that hotel room, with a $5,000 wedding dress scattered around us. The bouquet flowers crushed the makeup, ruined dreams destroyed. When the crying finally diminished, Emily lifted her swollen face. What are we going to do now? There are 200 people waiting for a wedding down there. We are going to cancel, I replied with pragmatism. It happens. People will talk for a few weeks, then they will forget. But I knew it would not be that simple. Michael did not seem like the type of man who would accept defeat easily. His pride was wounded, and men like him are dangerous when they are humiliated. I'm going to ask Jessica to tell the guests. We will invent something. Sudden illness, whatever. Emily nodded, wiping her tears. Let's get out of here. I do not want to see anyone. I helped her change and pack her things. We just told Anthony what had happened. He would take charge of handling the situation with the suppliers and guests. I paid an extra fee to the hotel to maintain discretion. Money always helps buy silence. When we left through the back, avoiding the lobby where the first guests were already arriving, Emily was unrecognizable. Not only because of the lack of makeup in the dress, but because of the hardness I saw now in her eyes. Something had changed fundamentally in her that afternoon. In the car while I drove home, she broke the silence. Thank you, Mom, for saving me from him. I squeezed her hand. That is what I am here for, honey. Always. What we did not know was that Michael would not accept the humiliation easily. In the following days, we would discover how far he was willing to go in his revenge. The morning after the canceled wedding, I woke up to the insistent noise of the phone. It was Anthony, his voice tense on the other side of the line. Rachel, have you seen the internet today? No, I just woke up. Why, Michael is posting things. Terrible things. About you and Emily. It is everywhere. I jumped out of bed, running to get my tablet. With shaking hands, I accessed social media. What I saw made my blood freeze. Michael had posted an extensive text claiming to have been the victim of a cruel setup by a psychotic mother-in-law who could not stand losing control over her daughter. He alleged that I had manipulated Emily her whole life, isolating her from relationships to maintain control over her and the bakery. Worse still, he had edited the recording I made, cutting parts and rearranging it so that it seemed he was only responding to provocations from his friends. The narrative he built painted me as a bitter, controlling, and calculating woman. And it worked. The comments were devastating. People taking his side, calling me a monster, saying Emily had escaped a marriage that would have imprisoned her even more to me, a toxic influence. Mom, what is happening? Emily appeared in my bedroom doorway, eyes swollen from crying so much the night before. My phone won't stop ringing. I looked at my daughter, her face still marked by the pain of the recent betrayal, and I hesitated. She was already suffering too much, but hiding the truth would only make the situation worse. Michael is spreading lies about us, honey. He edited the recording. He distorted everything. Emily took the tablet from my hands and began to read, her face paling with every line. When she reached the comments, silent tears began to run. He is destroying our reputation, I murmured, feeling helpless. The bakery, our clients, suppliers, friends, everyone was seeing that. Michael was transforming the narrative, making himself the victim and portraying us as villains. That same day, we received 3 more blows. A group of protesters appeared in front of the bakery with signs calling us abusers and manipulators. 2 large companies that bought our products called canceling contracts, and the worst close friends began to avoid us, some even sending accusatory messages. How can people believe him so easily? Emily asked, sitting at the kitchen table looking at the coffee that was getting cold untouched. They have known us for years. People love a scandal, honey. And Michael knows exactly how to manipulate public opinion. During the next 10 days, the situation only got worse. Michael gave interviews to local blogs, appeared on a popular podcast crying while talking about how he had been deceived by a family he truly loved. Every appearance was carefully planned to seem sincere and emotional. Meanwhile, we tried to keep the bakery running, but clients decreased drastically. Employees began to quit, fearing being associated with the scandal. Even the bank called us for a meeting, worried about the impact on our ability to pay the financing we had for the recent expansion. Emily was devastated. The shine had disappeared from her eyes. She barely ate. She barely slept. One night I went into her room and found her sitting in the dark looking at old photos with Michael. I was such an idiot, she murmured when I sat next to her. All the signs were there, the way he always asked about the bakery, how he became more interested in me after we started expanding. You were not an idiot, honey. You were deceived by someone who made that his profession. People think I am weak, that you control me. She looked at me, her eyes red. That is what hurts the most. As if all the work we did together as partners was some kind of abuse on your part. I hugged her, feeling my heart break once again. Emily was always my pride. Since she was little, she showed interest in baking, learning every recipe, every technique. When I finished paying the house loan and could reinvest, it was she who suggested expanding to the corporate events market. We worked together as equals, despite the age and experience difference. And now Michael was rewriting our history. On the 12th day after the canceled wedding, when we thought things could not get worse, Anthony appeared at our house with alarming news. Michael filed a lawsuit against you, he said, placing the papers on the kitchen table. He is alleging moral damages, defamation, and breach of contract. Breach of contract? I asked, incredulous. What contract? He says there was a verbal agreement to make him a partner in the bakery after the wedding, and that you, Rachel, deliberately sabotaged everything out of jealousy and control. That is absurd, I exclaimed. Absurd, but dangerous, Anthony warned. He hired Marshall Turner. My stomach sank. Marshall Turner was one of the most aggressive lawyers in the city, known for transforming simple cases into bloody battles in the media. He not only represented clients in court, but created public spectacles that destroyed reputations. And there is more, Anthony continued, doubtful. Jessica, the wedding planner, is on his side. She is saying she heard you, Rachel, planning to sabotage the wedding weeks before. What? Emily stood up, outraged. That is a lie. Mom worked day and night to organize everything perfectly. I know, Anthony sighed. But Michael probably bought her or threatened her. He has resources and is willing to use them. That night, after Anthony left, Emily and I sat in silence on the porch, watching the stars. The bakery we built together was at risk. Our reputation in tatters and a threatening lawsuit hovered over our heads. What are we going to do? Mom asked Emily finally, her voice small in the dark. I looked at my daughter and felt a determination grow inside me. Michael wanted war. He would have war. We are going to fight. I replied, my voice firm. I did not build a business from scratch, raise you alone, and overcome everything we face to give up now. The next day, I called Helen Vance, a formidable lawyer I met years ago at a female entrepreneurship event. She was not cheap, but she had an iron reputation and an impressive victory rate. Helen listened to our story, examined the evidence, the original recording, the signed documents, Michael's posts, and nodded gravely. He is playing dirty, but he made mistakes, she said, her eyes shining with determination. First, the editing of the recording is detectable by any expert. Second, his accusations are defamatory. Third, he has no proof of that supposed verbal agreement about the partnership. But what about the wedding planner? I asked. She is lying to support him. We will handle her, guaranteed Helen. People who are bought usually have compromised histories. Leave that to me. Helen set up a strategy on two fronts, judicial and public. We filed a countersuit for defamation and moral damages. Simultaneously, she hired a company specialized in crisis management to help us win back public opinion. The following days were a whirlwind. Helen got a court order for Michael to delete the defamatory posts. He obeyed, but the damage was already done. The communication team guided us not to respond directly to the accusations on social media, but to keep the focus on our work. You have a solid story, explained Marcia, the communication specialist. Single mother building a business with her daughter, overcoming adversities. Let's focus on that, not on his accusations. We followed the plan, posting stories about the bakery's journey, sharing old photos of Emily and me working together since she was little. Little by little, some loyal customers began to speak out in our favor. But Michael would not give up easily. 2 weeks after the countersuit, he launched another blow. He supposedly had found ex-employees willing to testify that I created a toxic work environment and that Emily was a puppet in my hands. Who are those ex-employees? I asked Helen, furious. I always treated everyone with respect. Mark Smith and Pamela Gomez, she replied, consulting her notes. I felt a chill run down my back. Mark was fired for harassment. Pamela tried to embezzle money from the register. Exactly, Helen smiled. Michael did not do his homework. We have documentation of both cases, including security cameras showing Pamela taking money. He just gave us valuable ammunition. For the first time in weeks, I felt a pang of hope. Michael was getting desperate, making mistakes. While the legal battle unfolded, Emily and I fought to keep the bakery running. We lost almost 40% of customers. We had to lay off 5 employees and drastically reduce expenses. Every day was a struggle. Every bill paid a small victory. One afternoon, while Emily and I worked in the bakery kitchen now with only 3 employees, when before we had 15, the door opened. It was Gary, one of our oldest suppliers, who we had not seen since the scandal. Rachel, Emily, he said, seeming uncomfortable. Can we talk? I wiped my hands on my apron, exchanging a worried look with Emily. Sure, Gary. Did something happen? Actually, yes. He put a folder on the counter. I received an offer from Sweet Dreams to supply exclusively to them. They offered double what I pay for your orders. Sweet Dreams was our biggest local competition. The owner, Carl Miller, had always been a respectful competitor until now. But you came to warn us before accepting, seeing in his eyes that he was torn. You were my first clients, he explained. When I started planting organic fruits, nobody wanted to pay the fair price. You paid it. That saved my ranch. Emily approached, touching his arm. Gary, we understand. You have a family to support. If you need to accept their offer... It is not just that he interrupted. Carl looked for me yesterday. When I asked him why the sudden interest in my products, he confessed that Michael had sought him out. He suggested a partnership to... How did he say it? Finish you off once and for all." My blood froze. "Michael is orchestrating a boycott of our suppliers," Gary nodded. "And the customers, too. He is offering commissions for whoever switches suppliers. Carl did not want to participate initially, but the pressure is increasing." "Why are you telling us this?" I asked, suspicious. "Because it is not right," he replied simply. "I do not know what happened between you and that boy, but I have known you two for 10 years. You are honest people and he is playing dirty." After Gary left, rejecting the Sweet Dreams offer, despite our incentive for him to accept it, Emily and I sat stunned. "He wants to destroy us completely," I murmured. "Because of wounded pride," completed Emily, her voice bitter. "And to think I almost married him. We need to tell this to Helen," I decided. "This is economic harassment. There must be something we can do legally." Helen listened attentively to our story, taking notes. "This is serious," she nodded. "But we need concrete proof. The word of a supplier might not be enough, and if we got more suppliers willing to testify," I suggested. "Gary must not be the only one," Michael approached. "That would help," agreed Helen. "But it would be even better if we had something written, recorded, irrefutable proof of the attempt at economic sabotage." It was Emily who had the idea. Her eyes, once dull from sadness, now shone with determination. "What if we pretended that one of our suppliers accepted the proposal? We could record the conversation when Michael gives specific instructions." Helen considered for a moment. Then she smiled. "That could work, but we need to be extremely careful. It has to look natural without any inducement, and we need to guarantee that it is legal in our state." The plan began to take shape. Gary agreed to participate, pretending to accept Michael's proposal. Helen prepared everything to guarantee that the recording was legal and admissible in court. Meanwhile, we continued to face the financial consequences of the defamation campaign. We had to mortgage the house to keep the bakery running. I spent nights awake doing calculations, trying to find ways to cut costs without sacrificing quality. One night I found Emily crying in the empty kitchen of the bakery, looking at the almost empty shelves. "He is succeeding, isn't he?" she sobbed when I sat next to her. "He is going to destroy us." "No, honey," I replied, holding her hands. "He can hurt us, make us bleed, but he is not going to destroy us." "How are you so sure?" I looked at her hands in mine, hands that had learned to knead, mix, and create since they were so small. Hands that contained the same strength as mine. "Because people like Michael only know about destroying," I explained. "But we, Emily, we know about building. And rebuilding always demands more strength and courage than tearing down." She hugged me tight, and we stayed like that for a long time. The next morning we would begin to execute our plan. The trap was ready to be sprung. Gary was the perfect bait. As a supplier of organic fruits for various establishments in the city, his switch to Sweet Dreams would be a significant blow to our operation. Michael would take the bait. Helen carefully guided Gary on what he could or could not say so as not to characterize a legal entrapment. He would use a recorder approved by the justice system hidden in his shirt pocket. The meeting would be in a public cafe where witnesses could confirm the meeting. "Remember," instructed Helen to Gary the morning of the meeting, "you just have to let him talk. Do not induce, do not suggest, just listen and confirm." The plan was simple. Gary would tell Michael that he was considering the exclusivity offer from Sweet Dreams, but wanted to understand the terms better. Specifically, he wanted to know why Carl had mentioned Michael as part of the agreement. Emily and I spent the day at the bakery pretending normality while our stomachs twisted with anxiety. Helen stayed with us, her phone always at hand, waiting for news. At 3:37 p.m. Gary called. "It is done," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "I have everything recorded." Not only did he admit to be orchestrating a boycott, but he also said things, well, you will hear. An hour later, Gary, Helen, Emily, and I gathered in the lawyer's office to listen to the recording. The quality was excellent, every word clearly audible. "So Mr. Miller mentioned that you are behind this offer from Sweet Dreams," began Gary in the recording. "Carl talks too much," replied Michael, his voice arrogant, easily recognizable. "But yes, I am financing part of his expansion in exchange for some strategic cooperations, like taking suppliers away from Emily's Treats bakery." A cold laugh sounded in the recording. "Exactly. That bakery has to disappear, and with it the arrogance of those two. May I ask why that interest in destroying them? It is personal. Rachel humiliated me, manipulated my fiancé against me. Nobody does that to me and gets away with it. Nobody. I understand. And what happens after the bakery closes? Will suppliers like me continue having exclusive contracts with Sweet Dreams? A pause. Then, probably not. Carl does not have capital to keep them all long-term. This is just a means to an end, which would be destroying Rachel, of course, making that pig pay for having gotten in my way, and the daughter. That idiot believed every lie I told her. You are beautiful, Emily. You are special. Emily. He imitated a sweet voice. Then he laughed cruelly. So desperate for attention, she believed any crumb I threw at her. Emily's stomach made an audible sound of disgust upon hearing those words. I held her hand tightly, but the most pathetic thing continued. Michael, is how she pretended not to see that I was only interested in the money. Who would be interested in a crying fat girl like her if it were not for the money? After that, the conversation continued for a few more minutes with Michael detailing how he planned to use other suppliers and clients to isolate us completely. When the recording ended, the silence in the office was heavy. Emily had tears in her eyes, but not of sadness, but of pure rage. "Do we have enough?" I asked Helen. She nodded, a slow smile spreading across her face. "More than enough. This proves not only malicious economic interference, but also completely disproves the narrative he has been building in the media and in court. What do we do now? First, we add it to our lawsuit against him. Second, we use it strategically in public opinion. We do not leak the complete recording. It would be cruel to Emily, but selected parts that show his true intentions." "And Carl Miller?" asked Gary. "He is involved but seemed uncomfortable with the whole situation." Helen considered for a moment. "I'm going to talk to him separately. It might be useful to have him on our side as a witness against Michael." The next morning, Helen called a press conference. She carefully selected snippets of the recording that would show Michael's true intentions without exposing the cruelest insults against Emily. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The same media that had attacked us now ran to publish the truth. Old clients began to look for us, expressing support. Social media, previously a battlefield where we were attacked, now filled with messages of solidarity. Carl Miller, owner of Sweet Dreams, issued an official statement distancing himself from Michael and apologizing for his participation. "I was manipulated and pressured," he wrote. "Competition in the market must be fair and based on quality, not sabotage." But the final blow came 3 days later, when a high-audience blog published an explosive report. 2 ex-girlfriends of Michael came to light to tell stories similar to ours. Both recounted how he had manipulated them to obtain financial advantages, how he had insulted them in private while maintaining a facade of Prince Charming in public. Michael tried to defend himself, claiming that the recording had been manipulated, that he was being persecuted. But it was too late. The tide had changed completely. 2 weeks after the press conference, we received a settlement proposal. Michael would withdraw all accusations against us if we withdrew ours against him. "He is desperate," observed Helen. "His image is destroyed. Clients are abandoning his consulting company. Nobody wants to associate with him. Should we accept?" I asked, looking at Emily, leaving the decision in her hands. My daughter, who had grown so much during that ordeal, shook her head firmly. "No," she said, her voice calm but decided. "He tried to destroy us not only financially but emotionally. He wanted me to believe I was unworthy of true love. I want him to face all legal consequences." Helen smiled proud. "I totally agree. And with the evidence we have, I can guarantee he will face significant consequences." The process continued. 3 months later, the judge handed down his sentence. Michael was convicted of defamation, malicious interference in business relationships, and harassment. He was ordered to pay substantial compensation in addition to publicly retracting. The bakery began to recover slowly. Clients returned, new contracts were signed. The road would be long, but we were back. One afternoon, while Emily and I worked in the kitchen, testing a new recipe, she broke the comfortable silence. "Mom, did you ever wonder if I had married him how long it would have taken me to realize the truth? I looked at my daughter, her face concentrated while measuring ingredients with precision. I do not know, honey, maybe days, maybe years. The important thing is that now we know. Sometimes I think I should thank you for having heard that conversation on the wedding day. She continued without looking at me, but other times I feel I should have trusted you immediately without needing proof. I touched her face gently, turning it towards me. Emily, you loved him. Love blinds us sometimes. Do not blame yourself for having doubted. She smiled, sad. I think I learned the hard way that not everyone deserves our heart. It is a hard lesson, I agreed, but you survived, we survived, and we came out stronger. That night, after closing the bakery, I stayed a few minutes alone in the kitchen. I looked around at the ovens where thousands of desserts had been created, at the counters, where Emily learned to mix dough, at the small office where we planned the business expansion. Michael had tried to take all this from us. Not just the business, but our dignity, our reputation, our mother-daughter relationship. He almost succeeded. But in the end, what saved us was not just the recording or the legal strategy. It was the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter. A connection that no man, no matter how manipulative, could break completely. A year after the almost marriage, as Emily and I came to call it, our bakery not only survived but was flourishing. The publicity ironically ended up putting us in the spotlight. Our story of resistance against a vengeful scammer resonated with many people, especially women. We received invitations to give talks at female entrepreneurship events. Emily, initially reluctant to speak publicly about her experience, gradually found her voice. She began to use her story to alert other women about manipulative relationships. The greatest danger, she said in her talks, is not the declared enemy, but the one who presents himself as your greatest admirer while planning your fall. One night, after one of those events, a young woman sought Emily crying. Your story saved me, she confessed. I was about to hand over total control of my family's businesses to my fiancé. After hearing you, I began to notice small signs I had ignored. Moments like this healed something deep in Emily. Her personal pain transformed into purpose. What was before shame was now strength. As for me, I learned my own lessons. The main one, never underestimate what a mother is capable of doing to protect her daughter. The day I heard Michael calling my daughter a filthy pig, something primordial woke up in me. A force I did not even know I possessed. I also learned about forgiveness. Not Michael, who never showed true repentance, but myself. For months, I tortured myself thinking if I could have avoided all that. If there were signs, I ignored questions I did not ask. Helen, who had become a close friend, helped me understand that Michael was an experienced predator. People like him are masters at hiding their true intentions. The bakery expanded to a second unit. We hired more employees, including 3 women who had lost jobs during the pandemic. We created a small training program for single mothers, teaching them the basics of baking so they could work from home. One quiet afternoon, when the first batch of breads had come out of the oven and the scent of cinnamon filled the shop, Emily called me to the office. Mom, I have something to show you. She opened her laptop and showed me an email. It was from a publisher inviting us to write a book about our story and the journey of the bakery. What do you think? She asked, her eyes shining with excitement. I think we have a story worth telling, I replied, smiling. We started working on the book that same week. Writing it was a cathartic process. Reliving painful moments was not easy, but there was something liberating in narrating our own story in our own words, without distortions or manipulations. The book was published 8 months later. Sweet Revenge. How I Saved My Daughter and Our Business from a Scammer became a modest success, mainly among female entrepreneurs and single mothers. Michael, we learned from third parties, had left the city after the trial. His consulting company went bankrupt. His reputation was irreparably stained. He tried to start over in another city, but the internet has a long memory. The latest news we had was that he worked as a salesman at a used car dealership. One night after a book launch event, Emily and I returned home exhausted but satisfied. We sat on the porch with mugs of tea watching the stars. You know what is strange, Mom, she reflected. If I had married Michael today, I would be considered a successful woman by conventional standards. I would have a handsome husband, apparently successful. I would probably live in a big house. And you would be unhappy, I completed gently. Deeply. I would be used, humiliated in private, possibly cheated on. She took a sip of tea. I have thought a lot about standards of success, how they teach us from little girls that marriage is the big goal, especially for women. I nodded, understanding perfectly. I myself had absorbed those values in youth, feeling like a failure for raising a daughter alone after her father abandoned us. You know what else I learned with all this, continued Emily, that true relationships are partnerships, not transactions. Michael saw me as a means to an end. You always saw me as a complete person worthy of love and respect. Tears welled in my eyes. You were always my greatest pride, Emily, from the first moment. That is why I decided something. She straightened up, assuming that posture I recognized from when she made important decisions. I'm going to get my master's in business management. I want to expand the bakery even more, maybe even to other states. And yes, someday I will marry, have children. But it will be because I want to, not because I need validation, or because I think it is what I should do. I squeezed her hand, my heart overflowing with pride. You will be amazing in everything you choose to do. 2 years after that conversation on the porch, the bakery Emily's Treats had transformed into a chain with 4 units. Emily was in the last semester of her master's, implementing new management strategies that had increased our efficiency by 30%. As for me, I began to move away gradually from the daily operation, trusting Emily and the talented team we assembled. Not for lack of interest, but because I knew it was time to allow my daughter to fully assume her role as leader. We continued living together, but Emily had bought an apartment of her own that she was remodeling little by little. It is important that we have our spaces, she explained. But we will always be partners, Mom. On a particularly busy morning when the main bakery was full of customers and the scent of fresh bread filled the air, I saw a familiar face entering. It took me a few seconds to recognize Jessica, the wedding planner who had testified falsely in favor of Michael. She seemed nervous, looking around as if she feared being kicked out. Emily was at the register serving customers with her characteristic smile. When she saw Jessica, her smile faltered momentarily. I approached, curious and a little apprehensive. Rachel greeted Jessica, her voice low. Emily, I came to apologize. We exchanged looks of surprise. Michael threatened me, continued. He said he would ruin my business if I did not confirm his version. I had just invested all my savings in the events company, and I was afraid. She swallowed hard. It is no excuse, I know, but I wanted you to know that I deeply regret it. Emily looked at me, then at Jessica. For a moment, I thought she would ask her to leave. Instead, she offered her one of the sweet breads fresh out of the oven. Thank you for coming, said my daughter simply. That requires courage. Jessica accepted the bread with tears in her eyes. You built something amazing here, something honest. I am very sorry for having contributed to almost destroying it. After she left, Emily turned to me with a sad smile. Forgiving is also a choice, right? One of the hardest, I agreed. That small moment of reconciliation seemed to symbolize everything we had lived and learned. Michael tried to destroy us, using our insecurities against us. He tried to transform Emily's kindness into weakness, my maternal protection into toxic control. But he failed because he underestimated what is built with true love, be it a business, a mother-daughter relationship, or a person's character. Those things can be attacked, they can even be damaged, but they have a resilience that no lie manages to destroy completely. That night, while we closed the bakery, I looked at my daughter, organizing the last details, checking the orders for the next day, smiling at the employees who were saying goodbye. I could not help but think of the day I heard those cruel words from Michael, of the pain I felt, of the rage that consumed me, of the fear of losing my daughter to a man who only wanted to use her. In that moment of desperation, I had made a choice. Fighting for the truth, even knowing that it could cost me my daughter's love, was the hardest decision of my life. Now seeing Emily strong, confident, and truly happy, I knew I had made the right choice. What are you thinking about, Mom? Asked Emily, noticing my contemplative look. About how sometimes the worst moments can lead us to the best places, I replied, smiling, and how proud I am of the woman you became. She hugged me, and in that hug was our whole history, the love, the pain, the fight, and finally the victory. Not only against Michael, but against everything he represented: the lie, the manipulation, the belief that love is a weakness to be exploited. We learned the hard way that true love is not blind, but sees clearly and chooses to love anyway. And that the truth, however painful it may be in the moment, is always the safest way home. Now, if you liked this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments which part left you open-mouthed. Oh, and do not forget to become a member to have access to exclusive videos that I do not publish here. I will wait for you there.